Welcome back to a very special edition of the Night Report podcast. For this instant reaction, I'm your co-host Mike Broadbent. Joining me is my co-host Richie Schneiderite. Richie, the long, painful holdout is finally over. We have an offensive coordinator, believe it or not. Somehow we have an offensive coordinator before we have a Speaker of the House. I know there was a funny poll on Twitter about that. It has now been about 90 days since we fired Sean Gleason in October, and about 40 days since we fired him, or since 40 days since the end of the season. A familiar name to a lot of Rutgers fans, Kirk Ciarrocca. He was previously the offensive coordinator at Rutgers in 2009 and 2010. He also coached wide receivers in 2008. This was a list. This was a guy who I didn't see on any hot board list. I didn't hear discussed at all. Just kind of had news break tonight about Kirk Ciarrocca leaving Minnesota to go to Rutgers. This is kind of about what I expected at this point. This is like the high watermark, given that we've waited so long and we've probably been turned down by a lot of teams or a lot of offensive coordinators. Tell me your gut reaction. How do you feel about this hire?
It's a weird hire. I'm not going to say it was great, but I'm not going to say it's the worst in the world. He's obviously had some success since being fired by Greg Ciarrocca back in 2010. Yep. But he was fired by Greg Ciarrocca back in 2010. So that's why it's a little weird. Like, I get it's a retread, but usually retreads aren't guys you fired. Usually retreads are like a guy that, like, oh, all right, like, hey, John McNulty left or Frank Cignetti left and he went and got a better job or something.
Yep.
It's like, all right, that's a retread because he went and got a better job. He came back. Like, even Greg Schiano's a retread at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think that's a good example. Like, he got a better job. He moved on, didn't work out. He came back, retread. You don't usually see a retread that was fired, but he's obviously rebuilt his career quite a bit since being on the bench in 2010. He went down to the FCS level for a couple of stops as a position coach, and PJ Fleck, which was his buddy at the time at Rutgers, ended up hiring him as OC at Western Michigan. Now, year one at Western Michigan, yikes, bad year. Yeah. Rutgers 2021 athletics or football program offense type numbers. Yep. But he rebuilt that offense. Produced some pretty solid seasons with Western Michigan, enough that obviously went to Minnesota with Fleck. He had a weird stint
from year one to year two. In 2013 was the first year at Western Michigan. They had, they went 1-11. They averaged 17 points a game. Year two, they went 8-5 and averaged almost 34 points a game. So
yeah, so it did get better. Obviously, so year one, you got to work with whatever you got.
Yep.
Which not a good sign for 2023 for Rutgers, but. He also did the same thing at Minnesota. Year one at Minnesota, it was like a yikes, and then it just rebuilt a little bit and got better and better. Then there was that weird year in 2020 where I don't think I'd judge him too much on that. That was the COVID year. They didn't have spring ball when he was with Penn State. They lost Journey Brown, who was their starting running back, to his career-ending injury, actually. I know him and Franklin had some differences during his lone year there, but I don't know if I'd judge him too much on that. And then I think it was he did like a volunteer offensive assistant type role at West Virginia, and then right back to Minnesota this year. Minnesota had a decent year, so not great, not bad. Like I said, this is that's kind of the whole consensus with this hire. Not great, but not bad. So it's like, that's kind of my overall feeling with this. It's like you could have done better, you could have done worse. So I'll call it like a middle of the pack hire.
Yeah. So he obviously was at Minnesota for 3 years after he left Western Michigan with PJ Fleck. Mm-hmm. They had just an incredible stable of talent at Minnesota in 2019. They had 2 NFL receivers. They had 2 stud running backs. They had Tanner Morgan, who had his best career year under him in 2019.
One of his 8 years.
Yeah, one of his 8 years he's been in college. It's interesting seeing this and seeing how many other players that are on their stat sheet from 2019 are actually still on their team. Producing. So Brevin Spanford, their standout tight end, was there in his freshman season. They had Tyler Johnson and Rashad Bateman. Like, they had a ton of talent and they put up numbers. But then he went to Penn State in 2020, and like you've alluded to, is the COVID year. They had like a 2-week long a 2-week long training camp in October to get ready for a season that they weren't even expecting to have. So got to give him a pass there. Mm-hmm. I mean, from my opinion on this, it's meh. Like, this is about the best you could expect given how long we've had to wait and how many times he's probably been turned down. Like, because being realistic, this is not his first choice. He might have had interest early on, and we'll kind of get into that conspiracy theory that we've kind of come up with on our own. There might have been an initial conversation with Kirk in December, and then he kind of circled back around to him. But this is not going to be a hire that excites people. He runs a power spread. He doesn't run this, exciting new, air raid style offense that we've all speculated that might come to Rutgers based on some, dot connecting that ended up not being true. I don't think we could really expect a lot of the offense this year unless we, just hit the portal running and just land a bunch of guys late who end up being better than a lot of teams expect. Because if you're still in the portal at this point, you're probably a plan B, plan C level kid.
Yeah, that's fair.
Let's dive into that because we've kind of identified a few targets in the portal that transferred out of Minnesota. You want to speak to those two guys?
So Ike White, 2022 wide receiver, went to St. Francis Academy, obviously one of the top producing programs in the Northeast by far. I think you could probably argue that they're number one or number two right now in the Northeast in terms of producing college talent. But 5.63 star, number 14 in Maryland a year ago, just entered the transfer portal. He didn't do anything this year. He's in the portal. He's from the East Coast. It would make a lot of sense. Rutgers needs receivers. I don't care who you are at this point. You might just take them.
We need multiple. 3 if we're being honest.
Yeah, he's a little shorter than his profile list. I know we listed him at 6 foot 175. Minnesota listed him 5'11", 185. So up 10 pounds, down 1 inch. But it seems like he's pretty good. I was watching his high school tape, and it's end of the day, it's St. Francis. You can get a connection there.
Yep.
Shit, man. Like, even the second tier guys are huge there. So, and then speaking of huge, the other guy entered the portal is 6'8", 280 offensive tackle Cameron James out of Chicago, Illinois, and Simeon Academy or Simeon High School. Yep. I forget if it's
Simeon's a huge school as well.
Yeah. So
that's where Derrick Rose played basketball, and Anthony Davis went as well.
Yeah. So he's only been on campus for a year and a half. 2021 he redshirted. 2022 he didn't see any time on the field, but he's massive. This kind of fits your mold that you kind of want at offensive line for Rutgers. You see Holland Pierce, you see Willie Tyler, you see I'm missing someone else. Even the guys coming in, Dominic Rivera, Moselle Williams, these guys are all huge. Yep. So it wouldn't be shocking to me if they went after him either. I know Ike White entered the portal, like 5 days ago? Not even 5 days ago, like 2 days ago?
Within a week, yeah.
Yeah, and Cameron James has been in the portal since December, so I know it might sound like there's not a ton of interest there, but I would try to push to get both of these on campus almost immediately. And it seems like these guys both have solid high school careers and could be better, even if they're depth options, they could be better than what you have. So, I'd go after both, to be honest.
Yeah, and we'll see, what kind of connections Ciarrocca brings based on the guys he's recruited while he's been at, the different stops he's been at recently, because you never really know. Who knows? Maybe he convinces some offensive players to join him from Minnesota. Minnesota has a young quarterback, and Ethan, whatever his last name is, it's a Greek name. Yeah. Because I know he was very high on that quarterback, and also they have a very close relationship. Mm-hmm. I want to kind of talk through Ciarrocca's first stint here. So he started off in 2008 as the wide receivers coach. He oversaw Kenny Britt's junior year, where he became a first-round pick. Then in 2009, he was elevated to the offensive coordinator. That was Tom Savage's freshman year. Also, it was Mohamed Sanu's sophomore year, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. No, that was his freshman year as well. Sorry, because they were both freshmen at the same time.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So I think Ciarrocca also had a key role in recruiting Tom Savage to Rutgers. So they went 9-4. They averaged 28.8 points per game. Pretty good offense. Everybody assumed, this was going to be a very, very good team coming into 2010. And then, tragedy kind of struck. That was the year that Eric Grand got paralyzed, and the whole season kind of went down the tubes because, I don't blame him. It was, a terrible experience for everybody involved. Mm-hmm. Kind of like, what almost like comparable to like the COVID year. You can't really like judge how a team did after one of their teammates got paralyzed. So they went 4-8 after that season. They scored 20.8 points per game. They ran a lot of that wild night stuff with like Jeremy Deering. Everybody was just like so sick of that because the Wildcat stuff at that point was like 5 years old. Like if you remember like Ronnie Brown on the the Dolphins was the first player to like really use it. That was the that one year that the Patriots didn't win the AFC Championship or the AFC East title in the 2000s with Tony Sparano.
Mm-hmm.
So they were just running these old concepts. It just wasn't working. And then he got fired. So that was his last stint at Rutgers. And then he, revitalized his career at Western Michigan and Minnesota. So that's just a quick recap of Ciarrocca 1.0 at Rutgers.
So that final year, there was 316 carries for the offense.
Mm-hmm.
140 of those were to Mohamed Sanu and Jeremy Deering.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, that was a really weird year offensively at Rutgers.
Yeah,
that was also the same year that Savage got benched for Chase Dodd, and then Savage transferred out. Because Savage had like a rough start to that season, if you remember. In 2010, I'm looking at his game logs right now. Game 1 was against Norfolk State, obviously blew him out. But then FIU, he had a rough game. North Carolina, he had a really rough game. He went 16 for 29. Then he got benched against Tulane, and that was kind of like the end of his Rutgers career.
Yeah, I know looking up to that, I know the Army game obviously was the one where Eric got hurt. Even before that, though, like the offense was putting up stinkers. Like they lost to Tulane.
Yep.
They scored 19 on FIU.
Yep.
Is that a Cristobal FIU? It might have been. It was. It was a 7-win Cristobal team.
So that was also T.Y. Hilton's. That was I think his
showcase
either
year.
Junior year or senior year. He was just dirty because I remember he returned like a kick return against my Alabama for a touchdown. Like he was just really, really good.
He reminds me so much of their other FIU receiver that just entered the portal. It's actually at Maryland next year. And Tyrese Chambers and extremely similar like builds and players and all that. So
Tyrese Chambers is going to be at Maryland, you said?
Tyrese Chambers and Caden Prather are both at Maryland.
Wow.
So Maryland's doing whatever they can for Talia next year. But going back to Kirk, I don't know. It's a meh hire. Like I don't see anything special. I don't think it's great. I think it's a little risky on Schiano's part to kind of hinge your career on this, but
yeah, and
we'll see.
It's so clear that this was not his first choice. But speaking of that, I do want to kind of we'll all put our tinfoil hats on right now.
We got to buy one. I'm just gonna buy.
We got to buy one
tinfoil hat.
So Kirk Ciarrocca on December 9th, it was announced he got a contract extension with Minnesota for 3 more years to be their offensive coordinator. So in 2023, he was scheduled to make $900,000. Following year, he was scheduled to make $950,000. Year after that, he was scheduled to make $1 million. He was previously making $625,000. So the timing of this is interesting. Obviously, the end of the college football season was the 26th of November. That was the end of the regular season anyway. Mm-hmm. And he gets that extension on December 9th. Very interesting, considering, he was probably having teams reach out to him. Maybe Schiano reached out to him previously. But he signs that deal. So he's had that deal for less than a month now, and he's already leaving. He does have a $275,000 buyout. So you got to wonder, because Pete Thamel's tweet, very carefully worded tweet. Let me pull that up right now. Mentioned that he was going to make a substantial commitment with this offensive coordinator hire. So here's the direct tweet from Pete Thamel. Sources. Rutgers is targeting Minnesota's Kirk Ciarrocca to be the school's new offensive coordinator. The deal is not complete, but is expected to happen in the upcoming days. Rutgers is expected to make a substantial commitment to bring in former offensive coordinator. So that's verbatim what Pete Thamel said. Substantial commitment to me when he's already scheduled to make $900,000, $950,000 and $1 over the next 3 years. That has to be like to offset that buyout for $275,000, 1.2 for Kirk Ciarrocca. Yes. That's a tough look.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%. I just think it's a lot of money. Like even I guess looking back at Gleason, like we looked at Gleason, we were like, oh, Mill, like you just stole Oklahoma State's offensive coordinator. Like Guy had a pretty decent background. I'm like, all right. And like, and Gleason, like, end of the day, Gleason knows offenses. I don't know what the hell happened with him at Rutgers, but some questionable play calling decisions there. But this just doesn't scream to me like $1 million hire. Like, I don't think it should be $1 million hire, but end of the day, it's going to be probably more than $1 million. So I just keep reading all the replies and stuff. And like, Minnesota fans aren't like, no, don't go, Kirk, stop, stay. And it's like, no, go ahead, have fun. Like, we'll find someone. We're not concerned. It's just, I don't know, man. This is just higher. I mean, for Minnesota, you got to think like this is like deflection number 4 on the year.
Yeah, they've lost a lot of staff. I think they're having trouble keeping coaches. I don't know why. It seems like PJ Flex was one of those coaches that like you really could only deal with for like bursts of time, like 5-6 years, and then his shtick gets old. But I did have I got a quote from, and you have a couple quotes about him too, so I'll read mine first. I got a quote from Tony Weber about Kirk Ciarrocca, just kind of like, because I've been hitting this guy up like all off season for all these different players that were recruiting who used to play at Minnesota, etc. So he said, to be completely honest, he's a guy that's bounced around a lot. And outside of one big year in 2019, he's just been solid. I think it was time for a change at Minnesota, and there's no reason he cannot be successful at Rutgers. So not necessarily a glowing endorsement, but not necessarily dragging the guy either. Just kind of like what he was doing, it's time for a change.
Yeah, I just realized, I forgot he's getting to reunite with Curtis Dunlap, too.
He's getting to reunite with Curtis Dunlap. Joe Simiak obviously worked with him.
Or no, technically... Was he? Actually, take it back. I don't know if he did get Curtis Dunlap. Because Dunlap wasn't there last year.
Oh, that's right. I think Dunlap was a 2020 kid.
2018. When was he in Minnesota?
So he would have been there. Yeah, he was there from 2017 to 2019.
Okay, gotcha. But yeah, no, I also spoke to, obviously, the Minnesota Rivals guys, and they, what a shot by Mag. Jeez. That was something. And he basically just said, he's an OC that will go to his team strength. In the past, he's loved to use a lot of shotgun almost 90% of the time. Use tight ends in various situations and a lot of wide receiver screens. So I feel like we've heard this before. Who used a lot of wide receiver screens at Rutgers? Who is going to use the tight ends and just didn't use the tight ends? He also said his offenses aren't terribly explosive. They'll move the ball at decent clips here and there, but that's mostly thanks to getting key matchups and such. My issue with that is I hear that. I don't see weapons that they could do that type of thing. Like, I know you said it off air to me. Like, it's going to be really dependent on one-on-one situations. Tell me who's winning a one-on-one situation on this team currently on offense.
I don't see it. Like, we don't have any. Like, I don't. Unfortunately, Schiano, one, doesn't like to go with coaches that he's not intimately familiar with, and two, it doesn't seem like he's comfortable dealing with schemes that he's also not intimately familiar with. So we're basically running these schemes that rely on, one-on-one matchups being one, and also, quarterbacks making pinpoint accurate passes, instead of just like running route concepts and schemes that just create space and create easy opportunities for like easy completions for quarterbacks. Like we're making this hard on ourselves. Like, Ciarrocca runs a power spread. Will he be better than Gleason? Probably. But like, this is just kind of more of the same that we've been dealing with. Like, I don't see this as a huge upgrade. It is an upgrade, but it's not a huge upgrade.
So he averaged 28 points per game, right? This is my thinking. And I'm not trying to be negative here, but it's going to sound negative. It is negative, what I'm going to say. He had 28 points per game with a guy that had 1,600 rushing yards. He also played quarterback roulette, which we saw all season long, which I think no one ever wants to deal with again.
Yep.
And it sounds like we might be dealing with it again because he did it at Rutgers with Dodd and Savage. He did it with Tom Savage, freshman All-American Tom Savage.
Yep.
What do you think he's going to do with not freshman All-American Gavin Wimsatt?
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be quarterback roulette again. He just did it with Tanner Morgan, who was like the eighth-year veteran, and then Athan, who I don't even know what Athan was, a second-year player.
Yeah, I think he was a redshirt freshman. Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not sold on this hire. Like, I get it. Like, his offense looked decent last year, and I think a majority of that's because you had Mohamed Ibrahim run for 320 attempts. Remember the attempts I just told you? It was 316 attempts for Rutgers offense total last time he was OC. That guy ran for 320 on his own. Like, and that's
and he was banged up too. I think he missed time this year.
If he doesn't get he had 20 touchdowns. If he doesn't get 20 touchdowns, that offense stunk.
Yep.
So I hate to say it, like it's not, and you're going to pay 1.2. Like I don't get it.
And let's just throw a caveat in there that we don't know the financial terms yet, but given that he's going to have to pay $275,000, you got to offset that somehow.
I don't get it personally. I think it's a little questionable, but can't really say much. I know we listed a couple different names too, and like one interesting name today. Like we actually posted our hot board today. Ironically, I knew this was going to happen. And then I posted, it's like, yeah, go fuck yourself, Rich. Like, higher. But there was another name on there. I thought Tim Cramsey made so much sense. Like from Memphis, he has a good. And you got to shy away from the tree. Like I know, I get it. Like you love these guys. Like they're your core group, but shy away from it a little bit here and there. It tends to work. Like Harris Simiak wasn't any relation to you. Yeah, he was a Jersey guy at the end of the day, but he had no relation to like Schiano or any of the staff. It was, and look at that. That's working out great.
Yeah.
I would have went with a young up and comer personally, but we'll see what Ciarrocca can do. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now. Because we do have to see what his offense is going to look like. But like I said, the numbers aren't anything spectacular. Like I don't see Sam Brown running 320 times.
No. I mean, this would be fine if we had like an established like group
identity.
Of personnel or identity. Yeah, if we had like, you know, a decent offensive line and an experienced quarterback, this would be fine. But we're working with like a talent deficiency still, especially at the skill positions. So it's just going to be tough to put up points and put up yards next year for any offensive coordinator that's not, scheming up really innovative and really confusing play calls. So I don't know. Obviously, the staff also is a bit in flux. Like we don't know who's coming back. A lot of that's going to kind of be finalized over the next week or two. The AFCA convention, the AFCA convention is next week or this weekend. I'm sorry, or maybe it's early next week.
The 8th.
That's usually
Monday.
Yeah, that's usually when a lot of coaching changes get made, and that's when you kind of reconnect with a lot of guys. You have, they're liking, coaching under Coach X. Oh, you hate it? We have an open running back position, and I'm just throwing a position out there.
Yeah.
So maybe we see a couple staff shakeups because, as you've alluded to, there's been certain coaches that don't seem to be being brought up a lot by recruits or being tagged in posts on social media. So it'll be interesting to see who ends up sticking around for 2023.
Yeah, I know we alluded to it before, but it seems like Ulrich is getting the most tags by recruits right now, which is kind of odd, I guess. I know I talked to one kid who even told me and I wouldn't read too much into this because Augie is still on staff from what I know. Yep. But one kid told me, he's like, yeah, the O-line coach, Coach Vallone told me all about the offer. And I was like, the O-line coach. I know he's like an assistant, but like Vallone's getting mentioned by quite a few recruits. I wouldn't be surprised if Schiano eventually promoted him, whether that be this year or down the line. But and then even looking at like quarterback recruiting, I did a deep dive, and it's going to be in the war room as well. But so there's 7 quarterback offers out there right now. 2 committed already to TCU and Georgia. One's a Michigan lean. One has a top 8 in Michael Van Buren, who doesn't feature Rutgers. One's Jake Merklinger, who also has a top list, and it's Tennessee, Florida, Michigan State. That leaves 2 quarterbacks. Dan Kalin out of Nebraska, who I talked to yesterday and told me he hasn't heard from Rutgers in months. Basically done. See you later. And AJ Serace, who was very close with Sean Gleason.
Yeah. Yep. Princeton head coach's son. Yep.
Now, I listed a couple QBs out there in the like mid-Atlantic region that have Power 5 offers, but none of them are like needle movers. Like, I don't know what they're going to do.
I don't either. I think that's kind of a tomorrow's problem. We need to get the staff in shape before we could even start recruiting kids. So
yeah, I
also think we're going to start to see some movement on the transfer portal because I think you have to. With this, it's clear that we need some bodies, some I'd say better than bodies at a lot of positions. So hopefully this allows us to start progressing the offseason the way it probably should have been from, the end of the season. But that's a luxury we didn't have because we didn't have a staff in place.
Yeah, it's crazy. Oh,
So-
and there's the victory.
Yeah, so we're recording this as the Rutgers game is finishing up. We'll have a pod in the morning about the basketball game, but we wanted to get this out to you guys as soon as we possibly could. Is there anything else you wanted to hit on before we sign off here?
January 15th is the first junior day. I spoke with Kevin Haywood, 4-star offensive lineman out of Archbishop Wood. Rutgers loves him. Obviously, they would take him in a heartbeat. Now the downside is we already have future cast in for him for Penn State. I think he's going to give Rutgers the time of day though, because Matt Walp, yeah. So that's Matt Walp's his former high school head coach. So that's always a good sign to get that guy on camp or have him on staff to help with that. They are going to keep pushing. They're going to try to get him. At the end of the day, it's going to be a tough one, but January 15th, it seems like a lot of guys are going to be on campus. I know Marquise Easley, the recent Illinois offer, also said he's going to try to get on campus. He isn't 100% sure, nothing set in stone and all that nonsense you want to talk about. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be interesting. We know they want a wide receiver, they want a tight end. I hate to break it to you, it doesn't sound like they're going to get a quarterback, and they want a defensive tackle. So that's the top three. We'll see what happens after that. That's kind of it until tomorrow. I guess we'll talk a little bit more about the hoops team, and I guess we could talk a little hoops recruiting too. That's always fun.
Yeah, a little tease there. Exciting to hear more about
I'll
that.
be there tomorrow night. I forgot about.
Yeah,
for,
so
Dylan and DJ Wagner.
So hype that up a little bit, because I think there's going to be a special group of Rutgers fans there as well.
Yeah, so the Riot Squad is going to be there in attendance. It's at Kane. It's at Union. Game starts at 7:30, I believe it is, or 7 or 7:30. I got to double check. It's the Allen Iverson Classic. Camden, who features Kentucky commit DJ Wagner, Kentucky commit Aaron Bradshaw, versus Don Bosco Prep, which is obviously Dylan Harper, who we all know. And it's gonna be a showdown. It's gonna be really good. Two NBA bloodlines between those two, between their fathers who both played in the league, and it's just gonna be a really good game. I'd suggest getting there early. There's a game before there at 5:30 between Newark West Side and Newark East Side. I'm probably just gonna. I don't know much about those teams. I'm just gonna go and just watch, just because I like basketball and I want to get in there right away. Tickets are exclusively at the door, so make sure you get there like in time and you're not waiting in this cold weather. But I guess it's not really cold anymore, so I don't know. But,
Yeah, it's been gorgeous last few days.
Yeah, definitely get there early, and then Riot Squad's also saying if you're a Rutgers fan or alum or whatever, wear red and show your support for Dylan. Last time they did this, it kind of worked out with Cliff, so we'll see.
Yeah, and Rutgers fans will have a couple opportunities to show Dylan some love at big events. This tomorrow, and then also the front office guys are hosting another New Jersey basketball classic on the 22nd of January.
22nd, yeah. Going to see the date. That should be a good one as well. And the Riot Squad's going to be there as well. So I mean,
that's at Ramapo, right?
That's at Ramapo. That's like 4 different games, and there's several Rutgers targets in that little classic. So definitely keep an eye on that one.
Awesome. Well, again, we appreciate you guys joining us. Again, we're trying to get this out as quick as possible. So if more details emerge tonight, we'll discuss it tomorrow morning when we record the basketball podcast. But for me and Richie, this has been another edition of the Net Report Podcast. Signing off.